Welfares are always super interesting units to look at just because of how varied they tend to be. Oftentimes, they seem like the devs were experimenting with more archetypes, and that's always great. Even though that isn't really the case for everyone I'll be talking about this time, it doesn't change the fact that these three units are pretty intriguing. Before I get into anything else, I'd like you all to appreciate the new background. I absolutely love the new event furniture theme, and I managed to get you Necties with a headhunt after believing that I wouldn't get anything worthy from that banner. Just look at them vibe. Anyways, not much to say right now. Quick reminder that all the talents are considered to be at potential 5 since they're all welfares, and if you just want to know about one of them, timestamps are in the description. Now, let's get into this.
はじめまして。あなたが今回の雇い主ですか？私はコリニアの傭兵、シデロカです。入職手続きはもう済ませましたし、これからしっかり働かせていただきますので、よろしくお願いします。
Sideroca is probably the only unit currently in-game who rivals Utage, and I'm not talking about her gameplay-wise. But that being said, how is she in-game? Kind of like most Anastasia, she's an arts guard, but different to them, she seems to be much more focused on survival rather than damage. You can't tell that too much from her talent, but that isn't a bad thing at all. After killing 5 enemies, she gains a couple of buffs, one being attack speed plus 15, bringing her from 1.25 seconds down to 1.08, and the other granting her resist, basically meaning that stun, chill, and freeze only last 50% of the time as they do with other operators. The resist effect is probably the best part of this though because of the utility that her skills give her, allowing you to place her in spots where other units, more so medics, won't be. That being said, her first skill is super simple. It recovers 50% of her HP and that's it really. That would be 1081 HP at E1 max, and you can activate it every 24 seconds. If this skill isn't really your style, I totally understand. Even though 50% HP recovery is huge, it's kinda just that. But if you want something a little more, her second skill has got you covered. To continue talking about the healing aspect first, this skill allows Sideroca to recover 7% of her max HP every second for its duration. At E1 max, that's 151.34 27 times, leading up to a grand total of 4,086 recovered HP. Just by itself, that's fantastic. But she also has an attack boost with this, an 80% one to be exact, making her attack power go all the way up to 903. At M3, it increases her HP recovery to 8% per second, but not only that, the skill lasts half a minute now, so that's 3 extra seconds of healing. At just E2 level 1, that's 172.96 HP per second, or 5,188 in total. But since you'll probably level her up at, let's say E250, that's 206.88 per second and 6,206 in total. I appreciate this. And since we're talking about M3ing her, she'll obviously have a higher attack boost, that being 110%, bringing her attack all the way up to 1,207. There is a little demerit to this skill though. Oftentimes, arts guards are used to attack enemies with high defense while a defender of yours blocks them. But with this skill active, she won't be able to do that because of her now single tile range. To be fair, this ties into the fact that she's more of a unit that has the independence and ability to be placed further away from the main action, doing your own little thing. But I can see why someone may not like that. Overall, Sideroca is a pretty solid unit. Even if you already have Anastasia, they can serve pretty different purposes and for pretty different strategies. Plus, it's Year of the Ox, so she gets extra special treatment right now.
カメラマンのシーンおよび撮影サポートロボットのレンズです。どうぞよろしくお願いします。はじめまして。
Before I start talking about Scene, I gotta apologize for how her stat sheet looks. Last minute I realized, oh, her stats don't really matter all too much and it's mostly just her drones. Oh, So I kinda just had to cram it all in there. Next time I talk about a summoner, it'll be better, I promise. I think most things are pretty understandable. Time just means how much time it takes to deploy another one after you've already deployed one. And as for the E2 stats, while I usually have a character at E250 because, let's be real, it's extremely expensive to get someone to E2 max, Scene and her drones are at E280 because I could only find the drone stats at their min and max levels for each promotion, so sorry about that. Also, side note, I absolutely adore her as a character. Scene and her little robot buddy have such a pure dynamic. Person who barely speaks at all and super talkative mechanical friend. I just want to give them both head pats, man. Her talent is the very basic summoner talent, allowing her to summon little camera drones, 3 at E0, 4 at E1, and 5 at E2. In addition to this, enemies within the 8 tile surrounding the drones lose stealth if they have it. This is pretty useful since very few units can do similar things. So taking her to a stealth-heavy map just to place your drones down is honestly a pretty good way to use her. I also find it kind of funny because with her first skill, the drones gain camouflage, so unless they're blocking an enemy, they can't be directly attacked. It's kinda like they saw someone with stealth and thought, that's mine now. In addition to this, they gain an extra 30% attack, leading their attack to be 488. That's obviously not very much, but to be fair, you aren't really using these drones as little DPS units, probably only to stall enemies, use them to reveal stealthy enemies, or maybe even as an emergency block. So the attack increase isn't much, and neither is their base attack, but it's an appreciated bonus. This is an infinite duration skill, so it has a little bit of a lengthier charge time at 72 seconds, although it really isn't all too bad. Skill 2, on the other hand, gives them quite a different utility. Scene immediately gains another drone, and all of them have increased attack, defense, resistance, and stealth negligence range. At E1 max, with an attack increase of 80%, they go up to 679, being able to actually deal a fair amount of damage. Plus, with their defense up to 538 and resistance to 15, they can also withstand a fair amount of damage. Just for fun, in a scenario where you max her out, Scene's drones will now have the same attack as Scotty would at E248, that being 858, as well as one less defense than Hoshiguma at E270, being 678. Even at just E1 max stats, their utility with the skill completely changes, allowing them to deal a pretty solid amount of damage to enemies they're blocking, or be used kinda like gravel. E2 max, though, place one in front of an enemy and one behind the same one, and as long as it doesn't have ridiculously high defense, rest in pieces. This skill lasts for 17 seconds and only has a 30-second charging time, which is honestly pretty impressive for this large of a boost. Only downside is that the drones are stunned for 5 seconds after it ends, but that doesn't have nearly the same impact on them as it would on normal units since you usually won't be using them as your main blockers, and that's the worst part of a ground unit being stunned. Overall, Scene and her drones are adorable, and I think I might have accidentally convinced myself to E2 them. Not to max them out, I haven't even been able to do that with my most used units yet, but because Scene deserves the world, her E2 art isn't the flashiest, but it's super nice to look at. Plus that base talent, total of a 25 production increase as well as plus 12 storage for EXP, even if I'd never use her, I'm sold.
Konnichiwa, ドクター。邪魔しに来たわけではありませんよ。私は、勉強に来ました。ガビルさんはもうこちらに来ていますから、私も一人で故郷に残るわけにはいかないでしょう。
If you've seen Tomimi's E2 art, you know that we should all hail the Queen of Thick. Tails, that is. I know what you were thinking before I said that. Jokes aside, despite the other two units I covered being subclasses of a class, Tomimi is the most niche of them all. This is because of her talent, which makes it so that each time her skills are active, her attack increases and deals physical damage instead, but her range drastically decreases and she can only attack ground enemies. Not gonna go over the values right now since, as you can see, I put them on her stat sheet. First skill is super simple, attack speed plus 60, meaning that now she'll attack every 1 second instead of every 1.6 for 30 seconds. Nothing much to talk about. Except for for that range. For non-melee units, this is the shortest range in the entire game, meaning that the ways that you can utilize her are pretty limited. She pretty much has to be on an elevated tile adjacent to a ground unit, or else there's no guarantee she'll even be able to attack while her skills are active. And even if she was, there'd barely be any time at all before the enemy who was there ends up leaving her range. Basically, Tomimi can't really be treated like a normal caster. First of all, because when she's using her skills, she doesn't even deal arts damage anymore, but she can't be treated like a sniper either. Oddly enough, I'd say the closest unit to her in terms of getting the most out of them by placing them adjacent to someone else is Flint. While they're two completely different classes, two completely different types of operators, they rely on someone else to block for them. And I guess you could say that about all non-melee units, but not to the same degree as Tomimi. With at least a couple rows of range ahead of you, there's still some time to kill an enemy depending on the unit's strength, or at least start dealing damage before a ground unit blocks the enemy and helps them take care of the rest. With her, that isn't really possible unless you're going up against enemies she can literally one-shot. None of this is saying she's bad, so don't take it the wrong way. It suggests that her utility is much closer to how you'd pair a single block guard with a defender than how you'd pair any other caster or sniper with one. You feel me? Moving on to skill 2, it's just kind of an RNG buff, giving each attack a 70% chance to either stun the target for 1.2 seconds, deal 190% damage, which would bring her E1 max skill attack all the way up to 1,865, or deal splash damage. None of these are bad, actually all of them are quite good. But there still is that 30% chance that nothing will happen. Although, if you happen to M3 it, there's a 100% chance that one of those things could happen. It also increases the stun to 1.6 seconds, so depending on how RNG is treating you, the enemy could be stuck for quite a while, since that's also her attack time. The damage increase is now 220%, meaning that E250, she could be dealing 2,728 damage whenever this kicks in. Hell yeah. Tomimi may be a strange unit, but that definitely doesn't mean she's a bad one. We've seen Arknights do more experimental things with welfares before only gacha operators with a similar niche get released later, so I'm pretty curious as to what other Tomimi-like units could bring to the table. If you wanted to E2 her just to set her art as your assistant, I totally understand, but don't open Arknights in public if you end up doing so. Oh my god, so sorry for the late upload. This video is going up on Sunday because the immense troubles happening around the time when I was making it and the day I was planning on uploading it. Had to change this entire ending ramble because of it, and that's fine. Even though inconveniences have happened, I should still be able to upload something on Thursday. It's gonna be lore related and most likely shorter than other videos since there isn't too much to say about the topic, but I personally find Oripathy to be quite interesting, especially its psychological side effects. So if you think so too, I guess that's something to look forward to. Anyways, do tell me if you enjoy using any of these units since I think they're all pretty cool, and sadly some people tend to overlook welfares. Especially tell me more about Tomimi's gameplay if you use her. Her niche is super different, and while there are videos of her, those are all showcases, which always have different strats and what people would usually do, since they're meant to showcase a specific unit at their most optimal state. Last but not least, one more quick thing, if you haven't finished them already, good luck with the EX stages on the event. I know it's already been a few days since they've been out, but hey, maybe you've been focusing more on farming and want to do the event stages once you're close to clearing out the event shop. I'm totally not projecting here or anything. What would make you think that? Alright, that's actually it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. It's really great to be back in the swing of things. If you happen to stumble upon this video by accident and enjoyed it, feel free to stick around. Whether you do or don't, if you made it all the way till here, it's very possible that I'll see you another day.